It might surprise you to learn that a century ago, one of the biggest stars in American show business was a man who captivated the nation as a woman, Julian Eltinge. They say life begins at 40, but a common saying once warned that our prime lasts just 5 short years, because by 45, we were considered old. This was the world Paul Newman was about to shatter. In November 1986, while appearing on CBS Sunday Morning, Paul Newman revealed a shocking secret about Golden Age celebrities. The legendary actor left the entire nation in stunned silence when he declared that some of Hollywood's most beloved classic starlets were, in fact, born male. The moment those words aired on national television, millions of minds raced, connecting his claim to the whispered rumors that had haunted Hollywood for decades. One was a four-time Oscar winner who famously wore trousers and insisted on being called Jimmy. Another, a French sex symbol who once scandalously entered a church wearing a wedding gown, despite a birth certificate that reportedly listed her as male. And most shocking of all, there was the silver screen goddess everyone believed to be the pinnacle of femininity until the truth of her past threatened to come to light and send the foundations of Hollywood crumbling. So, who were these enigmatic figures? How did they conceal such a profound secret while living under the relentless glare of the spotlight? And ultimately, what were their fates? All will be revealed, beginning with the icon herself, Marlene Dietrich, the most seductive man to ever wear a dress. In 1930, at the New York premiere of Times, Morocco asterisk, the entire theater erupted. It happened the moment Marlene Dietrich appeared on screen, clad in a man's black tuxedo, a white tie, a cigarette dangling from her fingers, her legs confidently crossed over a chair. And then she leaned in and kissed another woman directly on the lips, a genuine, lingering kiss. There was no camera trick, no subtle evasion. It was the first authentic same-sex kiss in Hollywood history. And in that single audacious moment, every conventional definition of femininity was shattered. The very next morning, the Los Angeles Times blared its headline in red, Dietrich, the most beautiful woman in the world, or the perfectly disguised man. In France, Le Figaro questioned, that kind of allure. Is it hormonal or simply impeccable makeup? In less than 3 days, over 2,300 articles exploded across Europe, not about her acting talent, but all circling one single explosive question. Was Marlene Dietrich truly a woman? Behind the scenes, Paramount Pictures was in a state of panic. An internal document from 1947, leaked years later during a dispute over director Joseph von Sternberg's will, stated biological sex verification required before re-signing actress D. One of her makeup artists, fired shortly after, told Variety in a rare, hushed interview, I saw her changing once. I don't know what I saw, but I'm certain it wasn't a typical female body. No breasts, square shoulders, thick thighs, and those sharp eyes. She just looked at me, didn't say a word, just smiled, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. Then, in 1982, Germany's Der Spiegel published a bombshell investigation. They had unearthed the school records of a student named Rudolf Dietrich, born in 1901, who attended an all-boys school in Berlin. The file contained a student photograph and a signature that were nearly identical to Marlene's. Just 1 month after Rudolph vanished without a trace, a new female student named Marlene enrolled at a local theater school. But the mystery didn't end there. In 1963, while on tour in France, Dietrich collapsed backstage. When her private physician, Jean Rochefort, examined her, he made a startling entry in his medical notebook. Patient bears unusual scar in lower abdomen. No uterus detected, no menstruation recorded for over 20 years. Biological sex undetermined. That notebook entry was later confiscated by the French government under the pretext of protecting the national image of an international artist. Then, in 1994, after Marlene's death, her biological daughter, Maria Riva, sat down for a long-form interview with the BBC. When asked if her mother had ever been a man, Maria broke down in tears. I once saw my mother injecting hormones, she confessed. I overheard her on the phone, speaking in a man's voice, thinking I was asleep. I always wanted to ask, but I was terrified of the answer. I don't know if she was a man or a woman. I just know she was never a mother to me. In truth, no one who truly knew Marlene could ever provide a definitive answer. Eric Maria Remarque, the famed novelist and one of her lovers, once wrote in his diary, "She belonged to no one and to no gender." That first night together, I trembled, not because she was different, but because I knew I had just made love to an eternal mystery. Perhaps that is why Marlene Dietrich remains a phenomenon. Was she the most beautiful man to ever wear a dress, or the most powerful woman who never felt the need to prove her gender at all? No one can say for sure. Next on our list is someone who took gender beyond identity and elevated it into an art form. Candy Darling, Andy Warhol's tragic muse, the transgender angel who forced the entire world of pop culture to stop and listen. Candy Darling, the transgender angel crushed by Hollywood's silence. It was the winter of 1,958 inches, a crumbling house in Forest Hills, New York. A 10-year-old named James Slattery was slapped across the face so hard that his lip split open, his only crime being that he had slipped on his mother's high heels. His mother didn't say much as he walked around the room. She just stared at him as if he were something broken, before muttering coldly, "If you ever do that again, I will send you away." From that day forward, James never dared dress as a girl in front of her again. But at night, after the house fell silent, he would crawl beneath his covers, wrap a towel around his head to mimic long hair, and gaze at his reflection in the darkness. School offered no escape. James was taunted with names like monster and not human. One day, while lining up for gym class, three boys dragged him into the restroom. They tore his shirt open and began carving the words "not a girl" into his stomach with a razor blade. Blood poured from the wounds, but no one took him to a hospital. His family's only response was, "You brought this on yourself." That night, James bandaged his own wounds and, with a tube of red lipstick, scrawled across his bedroom wall, "One day, I will disappear from these wretched people." At 17, James ran away to Manhattan and reinvented himself, taking the name Candy. With nowhere to go, she slept in Grand Central Station, washing dishes to earn a few dollars, and scavenging for clothes in thrift stores after dark. At night, she would stand for hours outside Bloomingdale's, gazing at the mannequins draped in silk gowns, dreaming of a life that felt impossibly out of reach. She started by performing in small drag shows, and Candy slowly became a fixture in iconic LGBTQ plus bars like Club 82, La Mama, and the Stonewall Inn. She couldn't sing, and she couldn't dance, but her eyes, no one could ever look away from those eyes. Then, one night in 1967, Andy Warhol appeared. He met Candy at a party at his famed studio, The Factory. With a single glance, he was captivated and offered her roles in his films, Times Flesh, Times and Times Women in Revolt, ***. Candy accepted, believing this was her big break. And in a way, it was. She became known as the transgender woman from Warhol's films. But fame didn't translate into work. Candy auditioned for countless off-Broadway plays, only to be dismissed time and again without explanation. One director finally told her bluntly, "You're beautiful, but no one will ever believe you're a real woman. If you're not careful, you'll just scare the audience." Rejection was one thing, violence was another. In May 1970, while walking through the West Village, she was followed by three men. They cornered her, called her a fake woman, and kicked her viciously in the stomach. They ripped off her wig and spat on her dress. The police brought her in, but no arrests were made. Their only explanation was, "We can't protect those who live outside society." Candy gritted her teeth and pushed forward. She started taking high doses of hormones to maintain her feminine figure, fully aware it was destroying her internal organs. A doctor warned her, "If you continue this, you will die young." Candy simply replied, "I don't have another choice." At times, she was forced to sleep on bare, wooden floors without heat or blankets because no landlord would rent to someone like her. For a time, she even had to sell her body just to afford her medication and stage gowns. In 1972, her close friend, musician Lou Reed, wrote the song "Walk on the Wild Side" about her. The song became a smash hit, climbing the Billboard charts and making Candy a household name. Candy was in the headlines again, hailed as New York City's new gender icon. She thought the door to acceptance had finally swung open, but the reality was far more cruel. In 1973, Candy was invited to audition for a small, independent film. As she stepped into the casting room, a startled assistant gasped, "Wait, this is the person Lou Reed wrote about? I thought that was just a character." The role was canceled the very next day. Candy came to the painful realization that while the world was intrigued by her, it wasn't ready to accept her as real. A persistent cough began, and later that year, her body started to waste away. Candy was hospitalized in critical condition, where she received a devastating diagnosis: late stage lymphoma. Upon hearing the news, her only question to the nurse was, "Will my hair fall out?" Then she fell silent. She refused chemotherapy, requesting only to keep her wig and her lipstick by her side. Even in her final days, Candy meticulously applied her makeup each morning. She painted her lips red, donned her silk dress, and sat upright, defying the excruciating pain in her spine. A pain so intense it made breathing a struggle. On March 21st, 1974, Candy Darling drew her last breath at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. On the table beside her lay an unfinished diary and a short, poignant farewell note. It read, "If there's a next life, I hope I'm born as myself." But while Candy Darling chose to live truthfully, under the spotlight, daring to defy gender norms through her art, the American screen legend Joan Crawford chose a much darker path. She lived her entire life draped in silk gowns, all to conceal a shocking secret of her own. Joan Crawford, silver screen queen or a gentleman draped in silk. In 1956, among declassified Vatican files, an Italian investigative journalist, Benedetto Torelli, uncovered a peculiar letter sent from Kansas, USA. It came from the St. Clair Monastery, written by a nun named Agnes Lorraine. She wrote a single haunting line: "A man is being worshipped as the embodiment of femininity. The church must investigate." Attached was a blurry black and white photograph of Joan Crawford. Her eyes were sharp as blades, her lips blood red, her body clad in a pristine white silk gown. She held a martini glass, posing before a mirror, but the disturbing detail wasn't Joan herself. It was her reflection. The face in the mirror wasn't soft or delicate. It was angular, with a wide jawline and eyes so cold they sent a chill down the spine. From that moment, the Vatican placed Crawford on a confidential watch list. The file, codenamed Action, was annotated: "High probability of male to female transformation." It noted that manipulating public perception through female identity poses risk to the family institution of the Holy Church. But the Vatican wasn't the only group watching Crawford. Over a decade earlier, in Missouri, 1931, local police detained a young man named Lawrence R. LeSueur. He was arrested for assault in a secret gay bar. The arrest report read, "Male, brown hair, 5'10", deep voice, wearing lace dress, crimson lipstick." 6 months later, the case simply vanished. Back in Hollywood, a dazzling new actress named Lucille LeSueur emerged. MGM signed her on the spot, and she soon chose a new name: Joan Crawford. From 1934 onward, all legal records of Lawrence LeSueur mysteriously disappeared from Missouri's system. No trace, no memory. Or if there was, people chose to remain silent. Crawford rose to A-list stardom, hailed as the uncrowned queen of the silver screen. But behind the curtains, shadows lingered. In an unpublished memoir, fashion editor Elsa Maxwell, who worked with Crawford at Warner Brothers, wrote, "She never changed in front of anyone. No one ever saw her naked. And when the cameras were off, her voice rumbled like thunder." As for her marriage to actor Franchot Tone, what the world saw as a fairy tale, director Clarence Brown told NBC in a 1980 interview, was business. That was a contract, not love. Franchot was gay. Joan. "I can't say for sure she was ever a woman, but I know they needed each other to survive." More shocking still were sealed financial records, obtained by the Los Angeles court during a 1979 will dispute. They revealed a recurring 30-year payment to a private medical service under a Dr. E. Kimmelstein, a known hormone therapy physician operating out of a covert Santa Monica clinic. The total cost exceeded $1.3 million, equivalent to more than $15 million today. When pressed by the media about these documents, the Crawford family lawyer coldly stated, "Those are private medical expenses, and a lady has the right to die with her secrets intact. Perhaps that's why." Everything Joan left behind was eerily immaculate. No nude photographs, no official birth certificate. And her entire collection of personal journals was burned just 1 week after her funeral. Her adopted daughter, Christina, who later authored Mommy Dearest, once said, "My mother never let people see her weak, no matter how much pain she was in. She would apply lipstick before crying. No one knows the truth for certain. But if anyone ever transformed so completely they fooled the Vatican, Hollywood, and all of America, it could only have been Joan Crawford. And right after her, we meet a figure who didn't hide. Someone who didn't need silk gowns to obscure the truth and who stood proudly under the spotlight during one of the most unforgiving eras in American history. That person was Christine Jorgensen, a former U.S. Army soldier. She was the first openly transgender individual in modern American history, and the woman who forced an entire nation to reconsider what it means to be female. Christine Jorgensen, from a U.S. soldier to the gender icon who shook America. The fifth name Paul Newman alluded to was Christine Jorgensen. In December 1952, America held its breath as the New York Daily News blazed its front page. With a headline in thick, bold letters, X, Gibb becomes blonde beauty. A former American soldier, a veteran who once served at Fort Dix as a corporal, had now returned as a graceful, blonde woman with a proud smile and a pristine white dress. Her name was Christine Jorgensen. And that media explosion, as several reporters later claimed, was the first time the gender line was publicly ripped open in modern U.S. history. But before the world knew her as the first openly transgender woman, she had been George William Jorgensen Jr., a thin, quiet, and peculiar young man stationed at Fort Dix in 1947. There, George was repeatedly flagged in military reports for excessive and uncontrollable feminine behavior. Military File G4-1229 recorded that George refused to shower with other men, frequently requested leave due to emotional imbalance, and was once caught wearing women's lingerie after curfew. A psychological board even recommended his transfer to Walter Reed Medical Center, citing complex gender dysphoria with a potential risk of desertion. They were right. At the end of that year, George vanished from Fort Dix without a trace. The Department of Defense quietly struck his name from the registry. 2 years later, in March 1950, a new name appeared on U.S. consular files in Copenhagen: Christine Jorgensen. In Denmark, Christine had undergone a series of pioneering medical procedures under the care of Dr. Christian Hamburger, whom she would later honor by adopting his first name as her own. But she wasn't just a patient. She was a meticulous documentarian of her own journey from orchiectomy and vaginoplasty to hormone therapy. Her detailed notes are still preserved today at the Aarhus University Medical Library. Though never released in full, a confidential 1951 U.S. State Department memo reveals that her visa was suspended indefinitely due to concerns over manipulation of gender identity by a U.S. citizen in a non-allied state. When Christine returned to New York in 1952, the press swarmed her as if she were some exotic creature. The Daily Mirror dubbed her an atomic age scientific marvel. Life magazine sent a photographer simply to capture the first trans woman sipping tea. Meanwhile, the FBI opened a covert file on her code-named FXJ-73. A telegram from J. Edgar Hoover to the Department of Justice, declassified in 2011, read, "Subject has significant public influence. Potential to shift cultural mindset. Monitor all public statements closely," but Christine refused to be intimidated. She appeared on national television, toured America, and spoke boldly about identity, dignity, and courage at a 1,954 lecture at Columbia University. She delivered a line that brought the entire hall to its feet in applause. "I am not some biological error, as they claim," she declared. "I am simply proof that no one is born to live in a cage." Yet, fame also brought heartbreak. In 1959, Christine became engaged to a high school teacher, Howard J. Knox. Together, they applied for a marriage license in New York City. It was denied the very next day. The official reason? Insufficient legal evidence of redefined gender, as reporters swarmed her outside the registrar's office. Christine's voice trembled as she said, "I've endured more pain than anyone ever should, just to be myself, and even then I was still not allowed to love." She was a woman denied love, but she refused to be broken. Katharine Hepburn, the androgynous icon in Silk who clinched 4 Oscars, and the fifth name on this shocking list. For nearly 6 decades, that name was Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn was the kind of woman Hollywood simply didn't know how to handle. She was sharp, fearless, outspoken, and utterly defiant of convention. Her talent earned her a record breaking 4 Academy Awards, a feat that remains unmatched. Time magazine itself crowned her the undisputed queen of rebellious female roles. But beneath the glittering career lies a question that continues to haunt the film industry. Did Hepburn live her entire life as a woman while having been born a man? In 1932, during her first RKO Studios audition, director George Cukor was visibly disturbed. He actually stopped the screen test. She had strode onto the set like an athlete, her voice deep and commanding, wearing a sharply tailored men's suit. When asked to change into something more feminine, she turned, smiled slyly, and replied, "If this suit doesn't fit, perhaps I don't belong here." Or perhaps, she added, "I don't belong in this world at all." Then there's the paper trail. Starting in 1941, internal MGM HR files reportedly flagged Hepburn with the code type J3. This was a chilling classification, reserved for individuals whose physiology was deemed inconsistent with traditional female standards. This explosive detail was uncovered in 1997 by film historian Donald Spoto while he was researching the MGM archives. But shortly after his discovery, the original document mysteriously vanished. Then, in 1947, Hepburn was admitted to Cedars of Lebanon Hospital. The cause was a horseback riding accident, but a medical report from that surgery, leaked in 2004, contained a startling entry. During an abdominal procedure, doctors allegedly discovered reproductive anatomy that was inconsistent with a biological female. While the report was never officially released, a blurred image of a patient file labeled KH47003 began circulating on European film forums, and this mystery extended to her most famous relationship. For over 2 decades, she and Spencer Tracy were inseparable lovers, yet they never lived together. There were no intimate photos, no public proposals, and not a single known love letter between them. A 1,973 recording made by her longtime assistant Margaret Maggs Thomas offers a cryptic clue. Later unveiled in the documentary The Untold Voice, Catherine can be heard saying, "I was his friend for a very long time. We were like two people who understood one another. But neither of us," she confessed, "ever loved in the way that a man and a woman do." Insiders also claimed that Hepburn maintained a fierce, almost unnatural privacy. She would never undress in front of female co-stars, not even in her own private dressing room. Actress Lucille Ball recalled this peculiarity during a 1981 talk show appearance. "We worked together," Ball said, "but I never once saw Kate in a dress offset. I never saw so much as an inch of her bare skin that wasn't covered by clothing. Back then, I just thought she was tough. Now, I'm not so sure." Perhaps the boldest theory came from veteran film journalist Joseph Lang in a 1999 article. Titled The Jimmy Theory and published in Film Scene, it proposed something unthinkable. It suggested that Hepburn might have undergone a full gender transition before 1930. The evidence? A reissued Connecticut birth certificate, filed after the tragic death of her older brother. According to archived Hartford birth records from 1907, the child born to her parents was listed as James S. Hepburn. But a reissued version from 1930 shows the same date of birth, the same parents, but with the name changed to Catherine Houghton Hepburn. The gender marker was also updated. To this day, the Connecticut State Office has never commented on this extraordinary coincidence. When she died in 2003, there was no deathbed confession, no final explanation, only a single strange line read aloud. At her quiet funeral in Old Saybrook, her final words were, "I lived truthfully. Maybe not the way they wanted," the statement concluded, "but it was my truth." But if Hepburn forced America to question reality, our next icon would make all of Europe bow in silent wonder. She was known as the Swedish Sphinx. But in the pre-war cinema circles of Berlin, she had another name, Greta Garbo. Who was she really? Greta Garbo, the Swedish Sphinx, or Hollywood's solitary gentleman. Greta Garbo. It's a name that is still spoken in whispers, as if saying it too loudly might shatter the ghostly allure of the woman who once ruled Hollywood. But behind that famously sculpted ice-cold beauty, Garbo didn't just break hearts. She rattled censors and unnerved reporters. She even triggered alarm bells within British and American intelligence agencies. A classified 1931 MI5 report, unearthed decades later, contained a chilling line. It read, "Subject Good Game possesses inconsistent medical documentation. X-ray images and birth records do not align with official gender designation." The subject in question was none other than Greta Garbo, Sweden's greatest cinematic export. As Garbo's international fame exploded in the early 1930 seconds, with roles in Mata Hari and Queen Christina, whispers began inside MGM itself. The lighting department filed repeated requests to alter the studio's standard lighting for her. The reason cited? The subject's chest and shoulder regions do not reflect light in a typical manner. One lighting technician, Ricky Stokes, later confessed in a banned memoir, "I never worked with a woman whose back was that broad. Her shoulders were squared. Her neck was thick. And during costume changes, nobody dared to look not out of respect, but out of fear of discovering something we weren't meant to know." The true shock, however, came in 1938. Garbo was summoned to London for a major Anglo-American co-production. But, without any public explanation, she was denied entry into the United Kingdom. The Daily Mirror published only a vague notice. Hollywood actress. Turned away due to identity discrepancies. Days later, the London Star ignited a firestorm. Its headline posed one haunting question: Greta, lady or gentleman? Official confirmation never came. Yet, years later, Garbo's former secretary, Claude Roussac, confessed on Inside Hollywood Mysteries that whenever he filled out her forms, medical, legal, anything, he was strictly instructed to use the word person. "Never Miss or Mrs. once," he recalled. I joked, "What are you hiding, Greta?" She just looked at me and smiled. Not warmly, but knowingly. And she said, "Because if you knew, you wouldn't want to write anything at all." In her final years, Garbo lived in total seclusion. She occupied a fifth-floor apartment at the Campanile building in New York. There were no maids and no visitors. The only person allowed inside was a Swedish nurse. This nurse, a woman named Larson, later revealed in a leaked 2002 recording, "I've seen her body. There was no uterus, no signs of ever having given birth. But what struck me most," she continued, "was a long scar running from her left hip to her pubic bone. A reconstruction scar. I never asked, I just administered the medication." She would close her eyes, turn on Schubert, and just disappear. When Garbo died in 1990, only one person spoke at her memorial: her longtime confidant, the author Salka Viertel. Her voice cracked as she delivered a single, unforgettable sentence that froze the entire room. "She did not live as a woman, nor as a man," she said. "Greta lived as a question, and a question she will remain." But while Garbo chose to live in the shadows, a whispered riddle no one dared to solve, the next icon on our list strode boldly into the spotlight. She was dressed in a black tuxedo, and she walked like a gentleman. And she set the world ablaze with a single scandalous kiss. This was Marlene Dietrich, the tuxedo temptress. She ignited Hollywood's very first gender revolution. These are the shocking secrets hidden behind velvet curtains, truths that no one dared to speak aloud. For decades in Hollywood, were these acts of choice, of rebellion, or were they simply the price one paid to exist in a world where gender was never a gray area? Tell us what you think in the comments below. We want to hear your theories. And don't forget to subscribe